All right, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Jenica Klassen, and I will be the moderator for today's press conference for the Federal, Provincial, Territorial Ministers of Agriculture annual meeting. Bonjour et merci de vous joindre à nous. Je m'appelle Jenica Klassen et je serai la modératrice de la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui pour la réunion annuelle des ministres fédéraux, provinciaux et territoriaux de l'agriculture. I want to acknowledge that we are gathered on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we acknowledge them as the past, present, and future caretakers of the land. I'd like to start by welcoming our co-chairs of the meeting, the Honourable Heath Macdonald, Federal Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, and the Honourable Greg Morrow, Nova Scotia's Minister of Agriculture. I'd also like to welcome the other provincial and territorial ministers participating in today's press conference. J'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue au co-président de la réunion, l'Honorable Heath Macdonald, ministre fédéral de l'Agriculture et de l'Agroalimentaire, et l'Honorable Greg Morrow, ministre de l'Agriculture de la Nouvelle-Écosse. J'aimerais également souhaiter la bienvenue aux ministres provinciaux et territoriaux qui participent à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui. Ministers Macdonald and Morrow will deliver remarks. This will be followed by a question and answer session reserved for members of the media. Questions may be directed at any of the ministers who have joined us today. We will start with questions in the room and then turn to questions from journalists on Zoom. One question and one follow-up will be permitted. Les ministres Macdonald et Morrow prononceront des allocutions qui seront suivies d'une séance de questions et réponses réservée aux membres des médias. Les questions pourront être posées aux ministres présents en personne. Nous commencerons avec les questions dans la salle, puis nous passerons aux questions des journalistes sur la plateforme Zoom. Une question et un suivi par médias seront permis. Je cède maintenant la parole au ministre Macdonald. I will now turn things over to Minister Macdonald.
Thank you, Jenica. Wonderful to be here. It's great to be here with my colleagues today in beautiful Halifax. First of all, I want to thank all of them, but I want to specifically thank you, Mr. Morrow, and your team for everything that you've done over the past few days to make us feel very welcome and show us some of this Atlantic Canadian hospitality. We've just wrapped up 2 days of very productive discussions on a variety of topics surrounding Canada's agriculture and agri-food. I want to thank all the provincial and territorial ministers for their collaboration and unwavering commitment to the sector. I'm looking forward to Minister Sawyer hosting us for next year's meeting in Alberta. Despite all the challenges in 2025, our agriculture and agri-food sector generated over $150 billion in GDP and achieved record exports of over $100 billion. I can tell you, ministers from coast to coast to coast are united in building a competitive, innovative, and resilient future for our farmers and our entire sector. This week, we've reached common ground in a number of areas. First, we finalized the Halifax Statement, which outlines our shared vision, guiding principles, and key priorities. These priorities will guide the development of the next policy framework over the coming year, including discussions to reach an agreement with the provinces and territories on a multilateral framework agreement. The key priorities include diversifying markets and increasing trade, enhancing sector resilience, and advancing science, research, and innovation. The goal is to build a framework that provides the flexibility to respond to regional priorities and evolving needs of the agriculture sector while supporting long-term success and sustainability. My colleagues and I also focused on business risk management programs. These programs are the financial safety net for our farmers to rely on to manage their incomes in declines, production losses, and unforeseen disasters. Improving business risk programs, starting with egg stability, is a top priority for everyone that was around the table. I'm pleased to say that as a group, we agreed to take necessary steps to bring forward egg stability changes related to non-arm's length labor and contract work, and are committed to reaching a decision by the 2027 program year. This change would recognize compensation paid to family members for work performed on the farm, better reflecting the realities of family-run operations and ensuring labor costs are appropriately captured under the program. Making contract work like cutting hay an eligible expense reflects on-farm realities and makes the program more responsive to the needs of producers. We also considered permanently increasing the egg stability payment from $3 million to $6 million. The adjustment would reflect significant growth in farm size and production costs since the current payment limit was introduced, helping ensure producers have access to the support they need to recover from significant disasters and market disruptions. We've also talked about trade. In light of ongoing trade uncertainty, tariffs, and supply chain disruptions, it is vital that we work together to keep the sector competitive and resilient. We do that by maintaining, diversifying, and expanding market access. We are also united in support of supply management and recognize its importance in a competitive and resilient agriculture sector. And we continue to support potential opportunities to increase internal trade. Once again, I want to thank Minister Morrow and my colleagues for being such wonderful hosts here in Halifax, and all ministers across the country for the great discussions and collaboration over the past 2 days. With the dedication of the people around our table, I have no doubt that we can keep our momentum, keep Canadian farmers, businesses, and the economy strong and growing. I'll now hand things over to Minister Morrow to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Macdonald. It's been a pleasure and an honor to host you and all of our colleagues in Halifax, in Nova Scotia over the last few days. The meetings have been very productive. As co-chair, I'm honored to have the Halifax statement to help shape the next policy framework for the agriculture and agri-food sector until 2033. I'm also pleased to have ministers commit to improvements to the Business Risk Management, or BRM, suite of programs to help them make them more responsive to the sector. These are priorities that have been identified across the country and certainly by industry here in Nova Scotia in the BRM review we recently undertook as a department. I want to thank my colleagues for these meetings, and I look forward to attending next year's meeting with Minister Sawyer in Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you, ministers. Before we take questions, I would like to remind everyone that we'll be taking one question and one follow-up if needed. Please state your name, your media outlet, and address your question to the specific minister you'd like to answer. Avant de commencer la période des questions et réponses, j'aimerais vous rappeler qu'une question et une suivi par média sont permis. Veuillez indiquer votre nom et votre média et adresser vos questions au ministre auquel vous souhaitez qu'il réponde. I will now turn things over to James Valdock, our virtual moderator. Je cède maintenant la parole à James Valdock, notre modérateur virtuel.
Thank you, Jenica. A reminder that this is a virtual question and answer session is reserved for members of the media. Reporters will need to identify their name and media affiliation to the host in the chat to ask a question. Those using a phone line will need to press *9 to raise their hand. One question and one follow-up will be permitted. If you experience any issues, please mention it in the chat during the event or reach out to media relations after the call. Merci, Jenica. Je rappelle que cette période de questions et réponses est réservée aux médias. Les journalistes doivent inscrire leur nom et leur affiliation médiatique à l'hôte dans le messagerie chat pour poser une question. Ceux et celles qui utilisent un téléphone doivent faire *9 pour lever la main. Une question et un suivi par média seront permis. Si vous éprouvez des enjeux, merci de le signaler dans la section conversation pendant l'appel ou d'écrire à l'équipe de médias relation avec le média après l'appel. Don't currently have any questions on the line.
Karen Briere, Western producer. Producers are asking for large-scale changes to agri-stability. What work do you intend to undertake over the next year to make sure we have a new program ready to announce next year in advance of 2028?
Well, I think we've done targeted changes based on conversations that I've had with stakeholders across the country when I visited every province, some of them more than once. I think the labor and the contract that I just mentioned were specific, and they've been specific since day one. I think we've all heard the same conversations, and I think coming together as a group and identifying those this week, it's extremely important. And the cap is something that we're also looking at, from moving it from 3 to 6 million. We hope to have these changes, the first two that I mentioned to you, hopefully by the season of 2027 for our producers and ranchers across the country.
My follow-ups regarding the research centers, and you signed the MOU with Saskatchewan regarding the two there. Are you in discussion with other provinces about transitioning the centers to them?
Yeah, certainly. We've had discussions with most, and look, from the beginning, we said we're not going to do less science. We're going to do more streamlined science. We're going to be more appropriate and exact. We're going to combine our effort with academias, with provincial governments, and first and foremost, stakeholders, so farmers and ranchers. I mean, so that's kind of where we're at, and we're working our way through that, and I believe we have a good path forward.
Hi, Mr. Macdonald. Daniel Fraser with Nova Scotia. I was just wondering, a lot of farmers across Atlantic Canada are worried about the grain elevator and the long-term future of that. Now, there has been a 2-year extension for that. But what assurances can you give farmers that this major asset will go on past 2020?
Yeah, I think we're in discussions now with the port, obviously, and we're doing everything possible to maintain that facility. So I think it's important. It's important to my hometown too. So right across Atlantic Canada. So we'll continue those discussions, and hopefully we'll come to a satisfying solution for everybody.
I did have a question for Minister Morrow as well. That's okay. Great. A lot of apple growers in Nova Scotia are saying they're getting rejection letters when they're asking for help to set up irrigation. And so I'm just wondering if the province is going to be increasing funding for those projects.
Yeah, look, we came off a devastating 2025 with once in a century drought. We're still feeling the impacts of that. We, I think a number of times last year, increased our budget for the on-farm water management program. We're, continuing to assess what the situation is right now. Had a good chat with an apple grower the other day just to keep an eye on what's happening. But to answer the question, I mean, we're always looking at ways we can help industry. So if farmers specifically have questions, certainly reach out to the department. But we'll keep working with the industry group to do what we can.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Hi there, Jonah Grignon, Glacier Farm Media. For Minister Macdonald, I was just wondering if you could tell us about any plans for any groups or organizations that you're hoping to or planning to consult with in the next phase of next policy framework discussions.
Well, I think first and foremost, we had, I believe it was over 20 meetings, and visited every province in the country to do a face-to-face. And I think leaning on my minister colleagues that are surrounding me here today, and others that had to leave for the airport, but also listening to them and ensuring that their voices are being heard for the next policy framework. But that was part of the discussion for the past day and a half. That's why we're here. And it was extremely important to have those conversations, and to hear their opinions. I mean, this is a big country and we have regional differences. So we wanted to ensure that everybody has full access to the federal government and changes to the national policy framework that are going to make farmers more profitable and sustainable in the future.
Thank you.
That concludes the in-person questions. I'll now pass it back to James Baldock.
Thank you, Jenica. Our first question is from Kelvin Hepner. Kelvin, you can go ahead.
Thank you for taking the question, or my question. Minister Macdonald, there's been a lot of acknowledgement over the last year or so that the world has changed in a big way since the last ag policy framework was negotiated, and there's been talk about the need for ambitious changes. What would you describe as the biggest change or accomplishment, the heaviest lift that has been done looking at the next ag policy framework compared with the past 5-year agreement?
Well, I think, we have to adapt. There's climatic situations, there's geopolitical situations, and we're seeing it firsthand. It's happening right now. And in places like Manitoba, we've seen all kinds of drought. We've seen forest fires. We have to make sure that we can react quickly with ag stability, agri-insurance, and agri-invest. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to come together as a group of ministers and colleagues to make sure that we're looking out for farmers. Farmers, they feed us, and we need to make sure that we recognize the impediments that they're faced with on a daily basis.
What's your response then when if people say that this is only incremental change and that more substantial changes are needed to the framework to deal with how the world has changed?
Well, I think what we've heard across the country is, administrative. We need to make changes there. We've done the contract work here. We've done labor issues here. I think we have two big wins that we can walk away with. We're looking at increasing the egg stability cap from 3 million to 6 million, which will be substantive. So I think we have some wins here, and I think farmers, I think, are going to be quite satisfied, especially the smaller farmers too, that maybe sometimes couldn't apply for some of these programs, will now be likely eligible.
Thank you.
Thanks, Calvin.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Tyler Reese-Sanford. Tyler, you can go ahead.
Tyler Reese-Sanford, Acadia News. My question is for Minister Morrow. This year is looking drier than last, and last year was obviously very dry. Minister Tony Rushton said this morning we have twice as many wildfires so far this year than last. How do we address those supports in the changing climate conditions? Do people in the industry feel that the supports we have currently are enough as those conditions potentially get worse in the future?
So, yeah, we, again, I mentioned the severe drought that we went through last year, and we're certainly still feeling the impacts of that. It varies in different parts of the province, but it is already a dry season. We're all hoping for rain, and I think we have some in the forecast coming up, which is good news. But there's a number of ways that we can help, and we have helped in the past. There's various programs through our own department. I mentioned on-farm water management previously, but working with our colleagues in environment and climate change, there's mechanisms there to help farms adapt to the climate reality that is today. So it's an ongoing discussion. It's part of our federal provincial suite of programs. We have provincial only programs, and we'll continue to work with our federal counterparts. We just announced a $25 million agri-recovery program, and I certainly appreciate the minister's help in moving that forward. So a number of levers we can pull, and we'll do all we can and continue to work with industry.
Thank you. Merci. Voilà qui conclut la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui. Si les médias ont d'autres questions, veuillez communiquer avec l'équipe des relations médias d'Agriculture et Agroalimentaire Canada. This concludes today's press conference. If media have any more questions, please contact Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada Media Relations. Thank you and have a good afternoon.